Welcome to Impact Makers Radio, featuring industry thought leaders sharing problem-solving insights to help grow your business and live the life you love. And here's your host, Stewart Andrew Alexander.
Hi, and welcome to another Let's Talk Divorce conversation. And on this segment of the show, I have Civil Litigation Attorney Jonathan May, owner of the Lion's Den Attorneys at Law PLLC, all the way from Miami, Florida. Now, Jonathan, who is an authority in the area of family law, will be talking to you today about how to avoid a costly divorce. Now, that sounds like a really interesting and useful topic to be speaking about. So, if you are one of the increasing amounts of people seeking counsel in the Miami, Florida area, and you feel you can relate to today's topic, it might be a good idea for you just to, give yourself a break. Log out of Facebook, give Twitter a rest for a while, grab a notepad and pen, and get ready to take some notes as we listen in to what Jonathan has to share with us today. So, with that said, let's not keep him waiting any longer. Welcome to the show, Jonathan.
Hello, thank you for having me.
You are so welcome, my friend. We're really happy to have you on the show. We know just how busy you are over there in the Miami area. So let's just jump feet first in then, Jonathan. Briefly, in your own words, of course, describe the kinds of people who you serve and the various types of situations they find themselves in when they come to you for your help.
I serve all kinds of people, and most of them are coming, or many of them come from a situation where their spouse is threatening to try to spend more time with their children or take their children away, or trying to get somebody to pay child support. And so a lot of people come to me in like a just distressful situation. Mm-hmm. And so one of our jobs is to help relieve that distress and the situation that they're going through. And a lot of times we have to explain why the threats that are made to them from their spouse often is false or would not be supported by the court. So we have an obligation to help educate our clients on the law and how their lives and their situation can be affected by going through the court process. A lot of people try to resolve the situation through their own discussions with their spouse, and oftentimes they can't come to a reasonable solution. There's a lot of distaste in the relationship. There's a lot of problems in the relationship and the responsibilities associated with it that can lead to them not being able to resolve it on their own. And that's usually when they take the steps to seek an attorney and come to court and try to resolve it through the court process. And a lot of people don't realize that the court often, once you come to the court, it's designed to educate people on the law and then try to get them to resolve it again on their own. And so most clients, and it's pretty much mandatory that everybody seeks mediation when they go into a family law situation, whether it's divorce, child support, time sharing, things of that nature. Mm. So once they become educated, if they still can't resolve it, then you're going to hearings, you're going to trials, and the court will resolve it for you.
Okay, Jonathan, thanks for sharing that. Now we have a pretty good idea of the different kinds of people who you can help. Before we go any further, it must be said that anything you share with us from this point on is not legal advice or legal assistance. It's purely for the purpose of sharing information. Can we both agree on that today then, Jonathan?
Definitely, and it's very important for me to avoid liability in these situations. You know what I mean? As attorneys, we love to give advice, and every situation is different. We have to adapt our advice for every single person based on their individual situation. So a lot of what I'm saying is generalized for how things can often happen, but may not fit that particular individual. And so it's just important that if you're seeking legal help, speak to an attorney, make sure they understand your situation and the facts involving it, and they can give you, careful guidance related to what you need to do. Okay,
perfect. So with that said then, Jonathan, for those people who are listening in right now, those people seeking counsel and, they come to you for your help. Now, I'm sure there are many misconceptions that you come across while you're helping those people, but what's the most common misconception you have to deal with surrounding the topic of avoiding costly divorce?
So one of the main misconceptions and one of the things that we're required to do as attorneys that we need to do to make the process go smoothly is educate our clients. And a lot of our clients don't understand all of the issues that need to be resolved when doing a divorce. And it is really based on whether you have property, you have children. Those are two of the main things. But when you do have children, you have to figure out issues such as time sharing, insurance, who's going to pay it, healthcare costs, who's going to have the children on holidays, birthdays, Christmas, how assets and investments and 401ks will be divided. And so there's really just so many issues that a lot of people didn't expect. So we have to educate them on, here are the issues that are going to be discussed. Here's how the court normally may do it, but let's try to find a compromise that'll work for everybody. Maybe, a gentleman or a husband really wants to keep his car, and a woman really wants to keep some item that's important to her. And so you try to find those compromises and you try to work it out between the parties.
Okay, Jonathan. So when you think about what you just shared with us, and obviously keeping your client's confidentiality in mind, please share an example or even a case study of how you have helped, or even how you would go about helping somebody who came to you with those challenges or those misconceptions you just described, and what kind of transformational results you were able to or would be able to gain for them.
I've had clients come to me in the past, and it was a situation where a father and husband had threatened to take the children and charge child support from a mother who had been the primary caretaker for a number of years. And so this is the type of situation that a court wouldn't remove a child from a parent that has been the primary caretaker for a long time unless there's like a really strong reason for it. So it was just something that wasn't really legitimately possible within the system and the laws that we have here in Florida. The court encourages that both parents are able to care for the child and spend time with the child, but it's not a situation where they remove a primary caretaker and go to another primary caretaker, without a really strong reason. And so that's just, an example of how, these misconceptions can be worked out or resolved for clients when they come.
As a reminder, ladies and gentlemen, my guest today is Civil Litigation Attorney Jonathan May, owner of the Lion's Den Attorneys at Law in Miami, Florida. And today's topic is how to avoid a costly divorce. Now, with that in mind, Jonathan, and for those people who are listening in right now and wanting to know more, please share one common but unknown pitfall that they need to be aware of, regardless of what situation they find themselves in.
Okay, so I have a lot.
Yeah, I bet.
Unfortunately, so I'll just run through it quickly. But one of the main ways that people avoid costs is avoiding litigation. Avoid paying your attorney. Attorneys, if they're for you, they're trying to avoid you hiring their services and using their services. So you have to be a great compromiser, and you have to know what your rights are. And so that's just one of the best ways, and how you can really tell if your attorney is somebody that's for you is seeing if they're looking to avoid you paying them, because the cost can be outstanding. And then the other thing that I can really recommend for people is try to marry somebody that has a greater income than you do. Try to get a prenup or a postnup. Always sign a prenup or postnup. Be wary of how many children you have, because it's a huge commitment financially. Understand that the money that you make is typically shared by the parties, and that when you separate, it can be divided. So if you know that you're the breadwinner in the family, those assets are going to be shared by the parties. And so one thing you can do is, if you know you're going to that situation, you may want to spend it. You may want to enjoy that money while you have the chance, because when you're together, you share the money. But if you're splitting up, it's going to be split. And the last tip of advice, and this is very important, extremely important in Florida, is all of your assets, keep them separate. So anything that you go into the marriage with, you want those in separate accounts where you never commingle. They call it commingling assets, but you never put assets together. It needs to be in a separate account. It can never be touched by the other person. They can't put anything of theirs in that account. And when they're kept separate, when you go into the divorce process, it protects those assets, so you wouldn't have to share them. But if it is commingled, then it becomes a marital asset and they can thus be shared. So that's the best information I have for avoiding costs.
Those were some really great insights, but I just got to rewind the tape, so to speak, and just come back to that one tip you shared where you said, marry somebody who makes more money than you. Now, come on, let's address that because, as Tina said, what's love got to do with it? So please expand on that one for our listeners.
Okay, so we definitely can't control who we fall in love with. And, I encourage people to enjoy the relationship with who they fit with. But when you decide to marry, you're entering a contractual relationship. And that contractual relationship can have extremely harmful results for people. So you have to be very careful. And so when you enter into that contractual relationship, you're in a much greater position when you're not the breadwinner. When you're the breadwinner, when you make, it's really about how much income one spouse makes. And you got to look at the difference between one spouse and the other spouse. The one that makes more is in the vulnerable position and is in a position for loss. The more that they make, the higher ratio that they make than their spouse, the worse position they're in. And it becomes exponentially worse, the higher that they make. And the person that's in the best position is somebody that doesn't work. That's a deadbeat. Literally, they're in the best position. And so one thing that you can do throughout your marriage is encourage your partner to work, encourage them to support themselves and to help support the family.
Right.
Because when it comes to the situation where you're getting divorced, they're going to evaluate how much does each party make and what's the difference between their different amounts. And the court here in Florida looks at, it's called need and ability to pay. So does one party need financial assistance and does the other have the ability to pay? So when you have this huge disparagement between spouses, and one has a need for it and the other has the ability to pay, the consequences can be extreme. And the different things that you're going to pay for, it's not just alimony, but the person that makes more is going to pay alimony. They're going to pay attorney's fees for the other party. They're going to pay us support. I've had a client that paid, and most people wouldn't know this, he paid his spouse's rent, phone line, internet, insurance, for the spouse and all of their kids, and he really didn't have a high income. And so you can get put in these really difficult financial situations when you're the person that makes a much higher income. So you really want to be careful and be wary of entering situations like that, and especially know what situation you're going in. And the one that I was telling you about, that person had a prenup. So the thing that I'll tell you is a prenup and a postnup will not protect you completely. They do not protect at all against support. So if your spouse needs basic needs, so if they don't make any income and they need basic needs, the person that has the money to pay them is going to have to pay them. And a prenup and postnup will never protect against that.
And Jonathan, is that even, sorry for that, I'm interjecting, but if that spouse, the one that's not working, is the one that's cheated on the other spouse, does the court take that into consideration?
So for the most part, no.
Right.
In Florida, we call it irreconcilable differences for why people get divorced. And it's very rare that cheating would go into the consideration of the distribution of money or who would pay for what. Although there are some exceptions, but it's almost a non-issue or non-concern for the most part.
So you could marry somebody who, for whatever reasons doesn't bring any money into the relationship. They cheat on you and you end up paying for all these things, what you mentioned before, their mobile phone, their internet connection, their rent. Whew, that's good to know. That's really good to know. So thanks for sharing that. Is it something that just applies to the state of Florida, or is this...
So this only applies to the state of Florida. I'm only licensed in Florida personally.
Right.
I couldn't tell anybody about any other state. I couldn't tell you about any other state, how it works.
Okay.
I couldn't tell you the trends, anything other than just how it works in Florida.
Okay, just wanted to make that clear. So people in Florida, you have heard it here first. So now, this has been really, really good. I'm really curious. How long have you been a practicing civil litigation attorney?
I've been practicing for 4 years.
So when you think back to all of the cases, all those people who you've helped, what's most important to you on a personal level about being able to help those people, those clients, to achieve their desired outcomes?
So the biggest thing for me is a lot of people come extremely upset, extremely frustrated. I have people crying to me. People call me in all hours of the night. One thing I learned as an attorney is not to give out my cell phone number,
Okay.
because I'll get calls all hours of the night, and they have this, extreme stress. And so being able to help them just work through the divorce, work through the problems, work through the issues and the concerns is the most important thing. And a lot of times there's situations where the kids are the ones that suffer. When they're spending money on attorneys, when they're spending money on all these different things involved with the divorce, even filing is over $400. You usually spend about $450 to file. It's money that goes away. If you don't have kids, it doesn't affect them, but oftentimes it's money that could be used for the children's benefit, and or even just the people's benefit. You know what I mean? And so as attorneys, we really have such an important obligation to reduce their costs, because the fees just for the attorney's fees can skyrocket as litigation continues and occurs. And so, I hate to charge my clients, and I don't want to continue to charge them, but oftentimes we get forced into situations where it is in their best interest. They can't come to an agreement, and sometimes there's a lot of money at stake, and you just have to stand up for your rights. It's very important. But if you can be reasonable, the people that save the most money are when they're reasonable and their spouse is reasonable, and they have little disagreements, but they're willing to compromise and work it out, and they both save a lot of money. But when it's something that's built out of spite, built out of hatred, built out of jealousy, and there's people that just want to punish the other person, or to make life hard for them, or to intimidate them, all these multiple things, that's when it can really escalate and the cost can increase, things like that.
Right. So now we have a clear idea of the different types of people you help and the various types of situations they find themselves in. And we also, through what you just shared with us, have an idea of what makes you tick, what's most important to you about helping your clients. So let's just spend a brief moment talking a little bit about your background, and especially your formal education and your experience as it relates to today's topic of how to avoid costly divorce and, of course, family law.
So I have a background. I went to the University of Illinois for my bachelor's degree, and I did communications, speech communications. And then I went to the University of Miami and studied communication studies. And my focus was in interpersonal communication, which really coordinates with being an attorney and dealing with people in general. So it's really helped me. And then I went to law school at Nova Southeastern University, which is in Davie, Florida. It's right outside Fort Lauderdale, very close to Miami. And after, while I was going to law school and through law school, and I'm still a communications professor, I've taught with 15 schools in the South Florida area. And the misconception a lot of people have about communications is they think it's largely related to persuasion or public speaking. And we teach persuasion and public speaking, but we also teach about interpersonal relationships, cultural communication, linguistics, nonverbal communication, and group communication. And so these are all things that can greatly affect relationships. And so because I have that unique understanding of relationships from teaching and from going to school for so many years on those subjects, it really helps me identify with people, understand and empathize with them, and to help guide them not only financially but emotionally through the situation that they're going through.
So, Jonathan, when you think about those people seeking counsel and, they're wanting to know more about saving costs on their divorce, what final thoughts would you like to leave them with before we move on to our final question for today?
The final thoughts I would leave is just, if you have children, make sure you put them first. Try to be flexible and compromise with your partner, your formal partner. Try to let go of, any type of disdain or hatred for your partner, and look at it in a, just a compromised way to get the divorce completed. Make sure you plan your assets. Get a prenuptial agreement or postnuptial agreement. Although they won't fully protect you, they can still protect a whole lot of assets and money. make sure you keep your assets separate. Never commingle your assets if you can. Like, a lot of couples love to make joint bank accounts and to share that account, but it's not in your best interest if anything were to happen. So just be careful with that. And this is my last piece of advice just for this portion, is that plan your assets while you're married rather than when you're going to get divorced. So plan before and during your marriage, and it can save you, 50, 100, 500,000, even millions before going into the divorce process. And it's not costly to plan it. It doesn't take a lot of time. It doesn't take a lot of effort, and it's worth it.
I'm thinking I've fallen in love and we've reached that point where my partner and I were considering marriage, and then I bring up the topic of prenup. Isn't that a little bit awkward?
It's definitely awkward. It's definitely awkward. And the thing that I would express to people is that although it's awkward, it's worth the awkwardness.
Okay.
It can be very worth the awkwardness because there's so much money that you can save. There's so much effort. There's so much disdain you can save. And this is the thing that I have to remind people. And I'm glad I had a chance to remember now that the person that you're going to marry, you love them to death. They're your favorite person in the world. When you go to divorce, they become one of your least favorite person in the world oftentimes. They're the person you hate the most. So imagine the person you hate the most. You spend on attorney's fees thousands of dollars to divorce them. And the judge tells you, now you're going to make payments to them. Some of my clients pay $6,000 a month, $10,000 a month, $15,000 a month. And you might just be paying it for their lifestyle. You know what I mean? Sometimes it's for the children, but how much do children really need? You know what I mean? So it's really going towards them maintaining a lifestyle, but you're working hard for that money. It doesn't come easily. You're working extremely hard for it, but it's just going to them. And alimony can go for the length of the marriage, and that shocks people. So if you're married 20 years, you're looking at 20 years of alimony. We even have permanent alimony for the entire life of the spouse. So these are incredible amounts of money. And so some clients, I'll tell them, hey, you can save $200 a month on child support and alimony if we go to modify. And they'll think, oh, that's not a lot of money. And then I'll add it up over 5 years, and they'll be like shocked at the amount that it becomes time.
Okay. Wow, Jonathan, you've shared so many insights today, and I have a feeling that we're only beginning to scratch the tip of the iceberg. However, we are running out of time. So if there is somebody out there who feels they want to know more about avoiding the costly costs of a divorce process, how can they find you, Jonathan? What's the easiest way for them to get in touch with you?
So you can find me online at lionsdenattorneys.com. We're on Instagram at lionsdenattorneys or Facebook at lionsdenlaw. And I greatly appreciate you spending the time and allowing me to join you and speak with you. You're such a gracious person and host, and
good looking.
Definitely.
Don't forget that.
That's the most important part.
That's the most important part.
The best for last.
All right. Okay. So thank you so much. Like I said, we are out of time. I'd love to sit here and shoot the breeze with you for much longer, because I know you could just provide so much more information to our listeners. That would be really helpful for them. However, we have to move on. Just as a reminder, ladies and gentlemen, you have been listening to Civil Litigation Attorney Jonathan May. Thank you so much, Jonathan. Thank you for sharing so generously with us today. You have certainly demonstrated, without a doubt, hands down, 100%, that you are a true educator, advocate, and trustworthy advisor for your client's success. So thank you.
Thank you for having me. It was a joy to be on the show. It's such a privilege. I can't thank you enough, and I hope to join you again at another time whenever you're available.
Fantastic. And we'd love to have you back again, because we know you have so much more in the tank to share. And I'd also like to say a big thank you to you. Yes, the listener who's tuning in right now. Thank you so much for joining us on this very insightful and informative conversation with one of the top civil litigation attorneys in the Miami, Florida area today. Again, his name is Jonathan May. Make sure you do check him out. Visit his website. I'm sure he's got some great resources on there for you. Whatever you do decide to do after listening to Jonathan today, I'm sure you're going to be in good hands. So that's it for today, folks. Again, my name is Stewart Andrew Alexander, and we'll be back shortly with some more leading family law professionals in this, our series of Let's Talk Divorce Conversations. So, until then, take care, have a great day, and we'll talk real soon.
Thank you for tuning in to Impact Makers Radio. To listen to all past, present and future industry thought leaders and trendsetters, visit us at impactmakersradio.com.